Hi, Sociology. So in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about cultural variation, the various different cultures that societies produce. And there is a lot of variation in different cultures. So, hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's get started. Now, here are our terms to know. If you notice, we're talking a lot about things that end in cultures, countercultures. We've got subcultures. You see ethnocentrism, which you may have heard of before, and then reverse ethnocentrism. So, as you can see, we're going to be talking about negative views of other cultures, the other cultures that societies produce, and cultures that go contrary to the mainstream culture in a particular society. Let's get started. Okay, so when we're looking at culture, the one thing that we need to know is that culture changes. The proper clothes, the proper way you talk, words and language, technology, all this stuff, values, norms, they all change over time. They're never static. They're always evolving. They're always changing. And there are three main components of culture. The first is a cultural trait. That's basically one part of culture. So that could be clothes, language, technology, certain values, certain norms. And those are really just for one particular society. A cultural complex is when you take a lot of those different parts of, let's say, values, norms, language, and religion, and they all combine to turn into something bigger and more grandiose, like nationalism. The idea of nationalism is a combination of multiple different factors for a culture. That could be language and technology, that could be values, norms. And when you combine it all together, you get this nationalistic, pro-us, go team kind of thing for your own society. And then there's a cultural pattern, which is when you take multiple cultural complexes and you say, okay, this actually happens everywhere. So for instance, every society has food. Every society has a language. If that's a cultural pattern, things that are found in every society are cultural patterns. So that takes care of some of the little jargon when we're looking at culture. So in cultures, we're talking about cultural patterns, right? Things we find. We also have cultural universals, which are common features to cultures everywhere. It doesn't matter where you go, every society will have this type of culture. For instance, every society has some form of sport. Every society has some idea of what a family unit looks like. Every society has an idea about marriage, about having a union between two people. All cultures have some idea of religion or values. Almost every society has a value of we need to support one another and just at least love the people that we're with, or else we're all going to die. Now, their purpose is also similar across cultures. For instance, we're talking about sports. It's competition, it's camaraderie, it's fitness, it's entertainment. The idea and the goal of sport is a universal because it's everywhere. And we're going to be looking at more of these cultural universals in class. So, let's talk about some societal variations. So, how drastically can societies be different? Margaret Mead, who is an anthropologist, wanted to learn more about this. So in the 1930s, she goes to Papua New Guinea, which is an island off the coast of Australia, and it's a very underdeveloped place, even still today. A lot of tribal living. And she was looking at two different tribes, the Arapesh and the Mungunmor. The Arapesh were very peaceful people. They raised children all together in this big community. Women were held in very high respect. And the Mundugumor were very aggressive people, very warlike people. They didn't have a strong sense of community. Women only raised children and no one else really helped. Women were held in a lower social status. And so Margaret Mead wanted to say, okay, the Arapesh are very peaceful. The Mundugumor are very warlike and aggressive. Is that because of genetics, or is that because of just culture? That's because their society produced these things. And as she studied them and learned and did some research, this is what she found, that the temperament of each of these tribes, the Arapesh being peaceful, the Mundugumor being very aggressive, resulted more from culture than herited traits. It wasn't based on genetics that one tribe was just more aggressive than the other. It's because that society produced values and norms that were either more peaceful or more aggressive than the others. Now, as we're looking at the cultures of different societies, we tend to always try to compare them to our own. We have this idea and a lot of bias sometimes that the culture that our society produced is superior because it's either more complex or because it has more history, or there are many more values attached to it. And when we try to think of this culture our society produces as superior to another, that's ethnocentrism. That's why when you go to different countries, you look at some of the values and norms or technology of other places and you think, man, those people are backwards, they're dumb, they're not enlightened, they're barbarians. That's ethnocentrism. Now, the opposite of ethnocentrism is cultural relativism. That basically says that the culture that societies produce, should be judged by their own standards rather than trying to compare them to your own. Now, the reason why we say this is because even within societies, there is variation in cultures. So sometimes you've all been in situations where you made to feel like an outsider, like you don't belong, like you don't fit. And that's happened throughout history. Now, two examples of that would be a subculture. There are multiple subcultures within a society, which is basically a category of people who have certain attributes, beliefs, values, and norms that set them apart from the dominant culture. Best example I could possibly give you. Go to New York City or go to London or go to Sydney or go to any major metropolitan area and go to Chinatown. Now, everyone in Chinatown would be part of the society of the city that they're in, of the country that they're in, because they live in the same geographical territory, have the same political authority, same large cultural expectations, but they have different values, their expected behaviors, their norms are different, they have different beliefs, the dress may be a little different, how you wear your hair, the music that you listen to, and that's a subculture. Now, a counterculture is very different. A counterculture says not only we're not just different than the society that we're in, we're going to be the opposite of the society that we're living in. Yes, we're in the same territorial bounds. Yes, we're under the same political authority. Yes, there are the same expected cultural expectations, but we're going to completely buck that trend and leave. Now, one of the best examples of this would be the Amish that live in Pennsylvania, Ohio. The Amish are people, they're from a Christian group called Mennonites. And they live very, very simply. If you went to an Amish community, it would look like the 1600s. All farm-based, no electricity, no motors, no modern conveniences. Everything is still done with hand tools. It's a very primitive, simple way of living. But people who are Amish have chosen to live like that, to reject the society that's around them, to have completely different norms and values, that's a completely alternative lifestyle to the society that they're living in. So, that's subcultures and countercultures, social variation, and the different traits, complexes, and patterns that we found in culture. Hope you learned something you did not know before. Don't be ethnocentric. Have a good day.